This game is a love letter to all the games that came before it, especially DMC 1, 3, and 4. Welcome to Very Geek and welcome to my review of Devil May Cry 5. This is exactly what happens when a studio or a company masters their work in class and creates something that's basically the edge and pinnacle of this genre.
Your legacy.
Saying all of that, what I'm basically saying is that Devil May Cry 5 is a masterpiece in its genre. Now, is it a masterpiece in terms of story and a couple things? No. However, in the genre of character action, this game is a masterpiece, and it just set the bar above like Bayonetta and DMC3, which is a very tall like bar to climb. And this game surpassed every single one of those games in my opinion. And honestly, I know Bayonetta 3 is coming out. It's going to be hard for them to even top this. And I love Bayonetta, but this game is just, it has so many things in it, and it has so much replay value on the game. So we're going to start off with the story. The story is good. It's fun. It's, you get more invested. There's some slow points in the game, like maybe towards the middle. And there's also some slow points in the story that like kind of drag on a little bit too much, and some environments do get a little boring because they start putting you there a little bit too much, like too frequently in a row. But the story itself is really fun, and honestly, when you get towards the end, that's where like it reaches its like crescendo, and it's like that ending, the last 5 missions are probably the best the game has to offer. But aside from that, their game does have a ton of great missions, and there's a ton of great bosses and boss designs and villain designs and demon designs. Like, I'm not going to discount the rest of the game, I'm just talking about the story. But the overall gameplay, demons and bosses, it's all there. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there, unique bosses, unique interactions, and unique moments and funny moments. And overall the game has a lot in the story and missions that offer a ton to the game itself. Now the game roughly, like if you're just gonna go blitz through it, it probably ranges from like 7 to 10 hours. But that's if you're like blitzing through it. If you take your time and you explore the environment and stuff like that, you can probably maybe go stretch it to like 11 or 12. But for a single player game, that's not too bad. A single player game doesn't have to be like RPG levels of long, like 25, 70 hours, So overall the game has a nice length. It has some slow moments in it, but overall the story is really good, and in my opinion really great. And it has a satisfying conclusion, because I would say this story is, like I said earlier, is a love letter to DMC 1, 3, and 4. And you'll get a whole bunch of callbacks, a whole bunch of nuances and stuff towards those games. Like DMC 4's, for example, obviously is Nero, and the whole thing with the demon arm. DMC 3, there's a couple Easter eggs and things that basically the main bad guy, Urizen, he pretty much has every move from DMC 3 essentially. Like every boss that you fight, he can slow down time, he can shoot like the radical lasers, he has like the fire puffs that come off the ground. He had like fireballs. Like he has so many things that is just all like a big massive reference to DMC 3. And if you play the story and whatever, then you actually get to know why. Another thing is that V. Now we're gonna jump into the characters. V is entirely a love letter to DMC 1, because like, if you know anything about the lore, or if you've been keeping up at least a little bit with the game, you can tell that pretty much V's avatars, Griffin, Shadow, and Nightmare, they're all from DMC 1 pretty much. Like they're all avatars based from DMC 1. Like if you look at them and their movesets and everything, like they're entirely from Devil May Cry 1. And the fact that he can use them, it's so surreal, because those were enemies in the first game. So it gives them also some more mystery to who V is. And there's another callback to DMC 1, which I won't get into, but once you guys get to that point in the game, if you're playing it, you guys will know why, and they'll even mention it. So Overall, the characters are really fun to use. Dante doesn't skip a beat. He's pretty much, like, I would say gameplay wise, he's pretty much the same as DMC4, more kind of leaning towards 3. But obviously with the new, graphics and everything, the game is a lot smoother, a lot more, it feels more like butter and everything. So, he still has Trickster, Royal Guard, Swordmaster, and Gunslinger and all that. So he has that still. He does have different, obviously, abilities and moves that he gets through beating his own bosses, which is another highlight to the story, which I really love, that gave this game just another tier above, like, even Devil May Cry 4, was that I love Devil May Cry 4, but a big downfall of that game was the fact that you played half the game with Nero, and then when you jump to Dante, you pretty much have to do the same story but backwards and fight the same bosses, so it kind of defeated the purpose, and it felt kind of like you're playing the same game again. And it was kind of, whack in my opinion, but the game was still great with the soundtrack and design, and obviously playing as Dante, you can't go wrong because he had his own unique cutscenes. But in this game, they don't do that. Once you switch characters, you either switch to earlier points in the story or different points in the story, and you also do different, like, entirely different levels. Like, Dante has not a single same boss, neither does V, not a single same boss as any other character. So they're entirely unique whenever you play them, so that's another great plus to the characters. V is probably the only one that was interesting. Obviously, he's not supposed to play like the rest, like Nero and Dante, but V was very interesting because if you're not used to using the avatars, or it can be a little bit boring in a sense because you're pretty much hanging back until you're mashing triangle or doing combos with triangle and your bird with square, and or your DT with nightmare, DT double trigger. You're pretty much hanging back most of the time and just kind of letting them take care of it until you can finish off the enemy, which is cool and different. And honestly, the gameplay isn't really that bad, but it does feel a little, boring, especially if you're so used to playing as Nero or, Dante. And then Nero's pretty much almost exactly the same as he was in DMC4. He can rev up his sword. He has the Devil Bringer Snatch, or Devil Breaker Snatch. And another thing that really only makes him different in this game is that he has a Devil Breaker that has multiple, each one is unique. One can shoot a beam, one can like do a massive like Shoryuken, one can do like a windmill, like Power Driver almost, with like they each have unique abilities, but they do cause them to break if you hold L1. And the circle button does do different things for each breaker, so that's what varies him up and basically updates Nero a lot rather than him being exactly the same. And what else? There's not really aside from that, the soundtrack is good. They did change Dante's OST for reasons back when the first time they revealed them. So they did change his OST. Nero has obviously Double Trigger, can't go wrong with that. But overall, the OST and the soundtrack for the game is really good. It's very atmospheric. It's very moody. So I really like the soundtrack for the game. The last thing for the story that I wanted to mention was that once you beat the game, because you unlock a certain thing, you unlock it permanently basically for the characters. So essentially when you beat the game, you can go back to fighting those bosses again, but this time using whatever you unlocked or even a certain Devil Breaker, you can do certain things to certain bosses, and it'll be like almost an entirely new experience, basically like having almost like it's not a quick time event, but you get like if you guys remember, for example, like in Devil May Cry 4, when the enemy will stagger the boss and you press circle for your Devil Bringer, you can do like a cool like beatdown thing or like a suplex or something like that. So you get a lot of, so basically once you beat the game, you can kind of re-experience a lot of these bosses and have different outcomes, or not different outcomes, but you'll have different experiences fighting the boss itself. So that adds a ton of replay value towards the game. Not only that, there's like, if you're wondering about Bloody Palace, that's coming in April, I believe. I don't know if it's a free update, more than likely will. But that's going to come in April, I believe. And then the last thing is that the game does add a ton of replayability through the difficulty modes as well. You have Human, Devil Hunter, Son of Sparta, I think Hell Over Hell or something like that. And you also have Dante Must Die. So there's a lot of game modes for you to even like just go back and keep testing like how good you are. So all in all, a fantastic game, a masterpiece in its genre. the best in the Devil May Cry series for me, in my opinion. It's for me, my order is probably going to be DMC 5, then 3, then 4, then 1, then 2, which is funny because they barely mentioned 2 in the promotion material, so that's pretty funny. But to me, this is my favorite Devil May Cry game. It has such a nice resolution, in my opinion, that obviously there could be another game, another sequel to like complete the Nero trilogy, but overall it's a solitary game and a return to the Devil May Cry we know. It is a masterpiece for me, and I will probably give it like a 9.5, almost a 10 out of 10, just from like the experience of playing it alone. So make sure, I don't know, what do you guys think? Let me know what you guys thought about the game, if you played it, do you agree with me or not, especially if you're looking forward to the game. Let me know down below in the comment section, and voice your opinion or voice your excitement for the game. Make sure you guys leave a like, comment, subscribe if you're new, share the video if you enjoyed, follow me on all my social medias like my Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat, and I hope you guys have a great night. Bye guys.